Hello, and thanks for joining us for the second episode of Appalachian Arcana.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Ben Collins, and I'm here as usual, joined with my wife, Cam Collins.
Hello. This weekend, we're recording the podcast from a pretty special location. I don't want to say camping because we're staying in a cabin, so we're not really camping. I guess we're cabin camping at Hungry Mother State Park in Marion, Virginia, which is about an hour north of our home in Bristol. So what makes this place special, other than the fact that it is one of my home state's most beautiful parks, by far, is that I sort of used to live here. And by here, I mean in the park. Back in the mid-90s, my dad lived in a cabin right across the road from the lake's beach. But even before he moved there, when he was living in a different part of Marion, we used to spend a ton of time here in the summers. You know, we were always coming to the beach and eating at the restaurant and running around the woods. So this is a really special place to me, and this is the first time I've been back in, like I thought about it earlier, it's been about 22 years. It's been a long time.
Wow, that's amazing. And actually, I can tell you, really, this place is special to me too now. It really is. After the last day or so, we've hanging out and enjoying this park.
The cabin we are actually staying in, which is super cool, it's a log cabin, and you know, you see log cabins that are, you can tell it's logs, but they're sliced. No. These are whole trees, basically.
Yes.
Whole logs. And it was built back in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. I learned from the Hungry Mother website. So it's pretty freaking neat.
I agree. And speaking of fire, I actually need to throw a log on the fire to keep us going here throughout the thing. So.
Yeah, it looks like it's getting a little low.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about, like, what is this episode about? What did we decide to do?
So, you know, we were planning to come up here to Marion to spend the weekend here at Hungry Mother, and our episode is going to be a day or two late. Because we're usually going to release on the 18th, and actually we don't have internet access. So anyway, you're probably not going to get it until the 19th. But we're like, hey, you know, we're going to be out in the woods. We'll have a fire. We should do an episode on campfire stories.
Yeah, and it's to set the scene. I mean, it's just this wonderful place that's very isolated, you know, and we're in the middle of the woods. You know, it's not a campfire technically, but it's
a fire.
It is a fire.
It's a cabin in the woods.
Yeah.
You know, it's not very Evil Dead. It's not a shack. It's a freaking nice cabin, but
it has
it's
AC.
A cabin in the woods. We have our three wonderful dogs with us.
Yes.
But we took them hiking earlier today, and they are completely sacked out. You probably won't hear them bark or anything this episode.
All right, so we talked a little bit about this, how to get started, and the idea was to start with the story of Hungry Mother. It's a pretty strange name, and I think it qualifies as a campfire story.
I think the tale of the Hungry Mother definitely qualifies as a campfire story.
Yeah, and so
they didn't call it that back then, but it's definitely an urban legend.
No doubt, and it's funny because I have in front of me like two different stories that were printed literally by the state, and they're both slightly different. And so I took a picture of the story that is in the awesome visitors center of the park, which is incredible. And I kind of want to just tell you the story and then point out the differences between the two, okay?
Go for it.
As this starts, there are many versions of the story, which I'd love to hear all the versions, but basically there was a woman named Molly, and her husband was killed by Indians. Okay, they were early pioneer settlers, and she and her child were captured by the Indians. and somehow they manage to escape, and they're in the middle of the wilderness, and they're having to survive on berries. And basically, what ends up happening is Molly lays down by a creek and dies, and the child, doesn't know what to do. I guess just starts walking across down the creek, and is finally found or discovers this one cabin, and all that the owner of the cabin can hear the child say is hungry mother, because she starved to death.
Aww.
I know, and so it's pretty creepy, and
Yes.
but it's really a legend in the sense that this big mountain right behind us is called Molly's Knob,
Yes.
and
And of course, she probably starved to deth because she gave all the berries and things she could find to her child.
yeah,
of course.
one of the stories mentions that they ate berries, and another story actually talks about how Native Americans destroyed multiple settlements on the New River, and this one actually mentions her last name, which is Molly Marley. So the other story mentions that they were taken to the North Holston River region. Anyway, it's now also called Hungry Mother Creek. And this park was developed in the 1930s, I guess, during the FDR.
Yeah, as
stuff.
part of the, yeah.
Well, that's our first campfire story. I think it's a killer one. I mean, there you go. You have some good death, and maybe Molly's ghost is hanging around on the creek.
Around the creek.
Saying, or the child is saying hungry mother. Who knows? But there we go.
Hey.
That's a good way to start off. And we have a bunch of stories for you tonight, and we're just going to basically alternate back and forth. And so
See if we can spook each other.
Yeah, exactly. And so
and we should mention before we really get rolling that most of the research we did for this episode comes from Haunts of Virginia's Blue Ridge Highlands by Joe Tennis. So shout out to Mr. Tennis for his awesome collection of local legends. Great work.
yeah, please pick up this book. And there's a lot of stories that we're not going to cover.
Yeah, a lot of stories we don't cover, and it's well worth your time.
Right on. All right, so do you want to start since I kind of did the Hungry Mother one as our first one?
I'll roll next.
Okay.
Okay. So my story is about Virginia City. Have you ever heard of Virginia City?
I haven't, no.
Okay. So Virginia City was actually originally called Dry Gulch Junction. It was a Wythe County amusement park. It was promoted in the 1970s as Virginia's only ghost town. It was not a ghost town. It was just an amusement park. But it was actually inspired by ghost towns that its founder visited when he was out west. Dry Gulch Junction was the original project of a man called Stuart Kime, Kime.
Okay.
So Mr. Kime built Big Walker Lookout in the 1940s. And Big Walker Lookout was a 100-foot high lookout right on the Bland and Wythe County lines. So it was this huge, big, tall lookout where you had a beautiful scenic view.
A tourist attraction.
Yeah, a tourist attraction. And he built a chairlift, a swinging bridge, and eventually a restaurant.
Okay.
Up to this place. So that was pretty successful. And he just, eventually he got the idea for another attraction, which would be Dry Gulch Junction. In the 1960s, he purchased a Shay, which was a 1905 steam locomotive that would be the centerpiece of Dry Gulch
It's hard to say.
Dry Gulch Junction.
Got it. I can see why they named it Virginia City.
Yeah, I can see why they changed the name eventually. So what happened was this train would take visitors on this scenic sort of V-shaped path through the mountains. It's surrounded by the Jefferson National Forest, and it would go up Big Walker Mountain, the same place he's got his lookout. And the purpose was to demonstrate the path of an actual logging train. So they would come up and they would end up in this basically faux ghost town, Dry Gulch Junction, which he filled with antique buildings that he actually rescued from around the area and rebuilt as part of his park, which is pretty cool, right?
Right.
So Mr. Kime was also a supporter of building Interstate I-77, which, as you know, 81 has a junction with 77 in Wytheville.
Right.
So he was a big proponent of this road system. Unfortunately, when it was eventually built, most of his businesses were on US 52. And the interstate allows you to bypass 52, and it basically killed most of his business.
Okay.
So from basically just the shock, of this, he died in 1972, right after it was built, like a few months later.
So it wasn't successful, and he freaked out.
Yeah. It's like, he didn't really. It seems he didn't really foresee that. Yeah, actually, this interstate is going to affect your business, bro. Because he thought it would be great, right?
Right.
And I probably was, just not for him personally. So after he died in 72, his son Ron vowed to complete his vision of Dry Gulch Junction. So Ron, eventually added a strolling magician, saloon shows, simulated gunfights, that kind of thing, and made it this pretty cool attraction that people, really seem to enjoy. It's sort of, it's so weird that it's sort of this Wild West ghost town themed park.
It's kind of Gatlinburg.
It's a little, but it's in this part of the world,
I know.
which is like not out west. It's pretty much the opposite of out west. So that's kind of crazy. Tragedy struck in 1979. An employee named Steve Hamilton was spreading sand on the railroad tracks to increase the train's traction, which was apparently something he did pretty regularly. Like, the train would be coming up, I guess, to, come to a stop and bring the guests to Dry Gulch Junction. And he would be, and maybe it was rainy or something, but he would stand on the platform and spread the sand, to help the train get traction and stop. Apparently, on this day, it was middle of summer, July 15th, beautiful day. Apparently, he lost his balance and he fell under the train's wheels.
Ugh.
Oh yeah, he died instantly, and with the steam from the train and everything, the engineer driving it couldn't see anything and didn't know anything had happened until he felt like it had hit something.
Gross.
Yeah, gross. But, it was pretty much just a freak accident.
Okay.
So that was the first tragedy.
Uh-huh.
And apparently shortly after that, I guess maybe the next year, they had this very rainy summer. And basically, their entire season of country music concerts was rained out that summer. They lost a ton of money, and they ended up having to sell Dry Gulch Junction in 1981.
All right.
Yeah, so they sell the property.
Bummer.
Yeah. Several years later, nearly 20 years later, Michael Hill and Jeannie Davis reopened it as Virginia City in the year 2000.
Okay.
So they rebuilt the antique structures and added a gem mine. The train was actually no longer part of it because it was removed after it originally closed in 81. And from the start, things were a little off. During the building, people kept reporting tools going missing.
Okay.
And they later mysteriously turn up again.
Mm.
But, they get it completed and open the place. And then in 2005, another tragedy. One of the owners, Michael Hill, basically had an aneurysm after he tried to save an out-of-control ATV from being lost in the woods.
So one of the key players.
Yes, one of the key players.
This place is cursed.
This place is cursed. And he died within weeks of this kind of accident.
Right.
Yeah. And, really, not just since he died, but basically ever since the reopening, the staff have reported hearing strange noises in the buildings, especially an odd scraping sound around the general store. So many believe basically the fake ghost town is now haunted by real ghosts.
Okay. So is this place closed now, I guess?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
actually.
I don't know either.
It's something that I really wanted to look up, but because we're out here in the woods with no mobile service, we can't.
Well, if it is open.
If it's open, we have to go there.
Yes, really. And it's paranormal investigation time at that point.
It's ghost busting time.
Cool. I like this story. And I'm glad they added a gem mine because that's more Appalachian. Than all this.
I don't know. We had logging, right?
Yeah, true. Okay, all right. So mine's a little shorter. This first one on mine is a little shorter.
Okay.
But it's very local.
Very local. Awesome.
Yes.
Withville is kind of local. It's about 30 miles up the interstate, but...
Yes, mine's about Saltville.
Yeah, and that's way closer.
Or Saltville.
Saltville.
Yeah, it's not... It's a little closer to where we are now. This is about a woman named Madam Russell.
Madam Russell?
Madam Russell.
Who is Madam Russell?
A really important person.
Is she a madam?
No. No. That was a title.
Not that kind of madam.
Right. This is a very distinguished title because she was actually someone who was really important in American history. Her brother was Patrick Henry, like the one who's like, "Give me liberty or give me death."
Wow. Cool. Okay.
Yes. And her daughter was Sarah Buchanan Preston, who lived in the mansion that later became the Martha Washington Inn.
Sweet. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah. And her husband. Actually, she had two husbands, but her main husband was General William Campbell, who was a hero of the Battle of Kings Mountain, and her other husband was another general. So she was kind of known for the life of two generals.
And to clarify, for our non-local listeners, the Martha Washington Inn is in Abingdon, Virginia.
Yes, it is. It is beautiful. And we might have to do a story on the Martha Washington at some point.
I think we will. We love Abingdon, and we're there pretty often.
Actually, by the way, as a small plug, we're going to be there in next month, in April.
I think it's either the 21st or 22nd for Virginia Highlands Community College's first Comic-Con.
That's right.
So please come out and see us and support a local Comic-Con.
That's right. I think we're going to talk about the Martha Washington in there more.
Definitely.
So her name, Elizabeth Henry Campbell Russell, really was actually a pretty significant person in her own time. Very significant influencer of the people. She was born in 1749, and she later became known as Madam Russell as a kind of title of respect. So she became a Methodist preacher, I guess you could say. But basically what would happen is people would even come to her and she would take them in and provide help. And so she was beloved, very much beloved. And where she lived was at the edge of this lake, and this lake in Saltville no longer exists.
Interesting.
It's an ancient lake. There's very few natural lakes, in the world, and this was one of them. There were even mammoths died trying to drink from it, muddy, swampy lake.
Which is really funny because growing up in our area, we have so many lakes.
Right.
And then you find out, wait, what? These aren't natural?
No, they're not. They're all made by dams.
They're all made by the TVA, basically.
In fact, one thing we learned today was this lake here at the Hungry Mother is one of the few lakes I've ever heard of that was made just strictly for recreation.
Which is super cool.
It is cool. Anyway, this lake was drained to make a road, and it was, at the time, a really beautiful location, and essentially she did her thing there for a while, and later in 1825 she finally died, and people buried her with pomp and circumstance and all this, so she had a significant burial site in Saltville. But then, which I think is kind of creepy, she was reinterred in 1842 in Smith County.
Why did they move her?
Because that's where her general husband was.
Okay.
They thought, well, let's dig her up. How many years later? I don't know whose idea this was.
That's pretty creepy.
But they did actually, and this I think might have started the hauntings. Okay, so basically, it's like you disturb her burial, and so her cabin at that point became the center.
It's
of kind
poltergeist time.
Yes, it became paranormal. Basically, in 1845, a family called the Taylor family moved into the cabin, and one day, this is, the history is that Mrs. Taylor told her daughter and a visiting girl they could eat a peach, but only one, or else the quote-unquote silk petticoats would get them.
The heck is that?
I don't know. And so, but anyway, the girls got their peaches, but in disobedience, they went ahead and ignored this silk petticoats warning and got another one. But just as they reached for it, they heard this phantom petticoats coming to the head of the steps.
Swish, swish, swish?
Yes. So
oh my
like
gosh,
clothing.
those are ghosts.
Yes. It's kind of like the ghosts are stirring.
Mary Russell.
Right.
Madam Russell. Sorry.
Yeah. And basically, so obviously this sort of petticoat haunting thing was actually a thing for a while with the Taylor family. But it didn't stop there. So in 1900, a different family, the Burtons, moved in. And this time, the young girls, especially the written histories, Nanny Burton, would tell of hearing preaching and singing upstairs. Or like people muttering Bible verses and stuff, especially during religious holidays. And it got to the point where they got the hell out of there.
Wow.
They left.
They just left.
It wasn't just one incident. It was like
Wow.
a recurring haunting. Yes.
Spooky.
Okay. All right.
You don't hear about a lot of haunted churches. That's really interesting.
Right. And anyway, so basically, and it really wasn't technically a church, but ironically it became one later. And so the thing was, it became a barn, and then it later was demolished.
Mm-hmm.
But, she was such a significant person in history. Her cabin was recreated.
Oh, wow.
A historic replica in 1974.
Neat.
And actually there was a church built there in 1898. And so even to this day, it's a significant place you can visit.
Cool.
Now, it's not over.
Uh-oh.
There's more.
There's more?
Yes. So the church is being renovated in 2005.
Uh-oh.
And
don't renovate things. The ghosts don't like it.
Yeah, and essentially Madam Russell is still around, okay? Because he heard and was distinctly a rocking chair.
Creak.
Yeah, and he says I did not have the guts to go upstairs and check.
He knows.
Oh yeah, and then there's one other reporting sighting. Fred DeBusk went to work in the church attic installing lights, and for 3 weeks nothing happened. But on the last day, he looked around the attic, and he had this horrible feeling, like it was like the hair on the back of your neck stands, but I mean just. Everything on his arm stood up. It was very much a bad feeling, and he got out of there.
Wow.
So you can actually visit this place today and see
Be
for
scared
yourself. Yeah, see what you can find. So that's the story of Haunted Saltville.
Okay. Well, mine isn't quite as local, but appropriately, it is the story of a haunting at another Virginia state park.
Okay.
This is the story of the haunting at Breaks Interstate Park. And it's called that not because it's off an interstate, but because it's located in both Dickinson and Buchanan counties here in Virginia, and also part of it is in eastern Kentucky. So it is interstate.
Okay.
And I've been there also. It's also like really beautiful. I'd love to go back there. I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I was there, actually stayed in a cabin when I was there for a health fair once that I back when I worked for a cancer center, and it was really beautiful. So yeah, it's definitely another cool Virginia State Park. So most of the land that now comprises Breaks Interstate Park was originally owned by a man named Richard Potter. Back in the 1800s, Potter was an herb doctor.
Okay, an herb doctor.
An herb doctor. And he lived on top of Pine Mountain in a log cabin that he built for his wife Teeny and their 10, yes, I said 10 children.
All right.
Aside from his doctoring, Potter was also known for his applejack and the peach brandy that he would offer their guests.
And his herbs.
So Mr. Potter died in 1882.
Okay.
Much later, in the 1950s, plans were made to build Breaks Interstate Park on that land. And a picnic shelter was eventually erected next to the grave of Richard Potter, a site that's now called Potter's Knoll. And like a lot of things that we hear about, they did not disturb his grave. His grave is still there. They didn't move his body or any of that stuff that usually leads to a haunting.
Okay.
So, however, many campers at Potter's Knoll have told stories of seeing a ghostly man in a long coat and a cowboy hat who appears in the area during storms, particularly like they'll see him in flashes of lightning.
Oh, that's kind of spooky.
That's pretty spooky. And as recently as, I think maybe 2005, a camper from Wise County reported basically biking over to the Breaks and getting stuck in a storm and taking shelter in, the picnic area at Potter's Knoll. And, there's a storm, there's flashes of lightning, and he sees this ghostly figure in the long black coat and the cowboy hat.
Oh, I'm sure he thought he was dead. He was done for.
He eventually he just had to get out of there. Like, he's like, I don't care if it's raining, I'm gone. And, he comes back home, and basically all his friends are like, oh, yeah, that's just a ghost of Richard Potter.
So is this like a maintained camp place, like a shelter?
It's a picnic shelter.
So you can literally go there now.
You can go there right now.
And camp there if you dare.
If you dare. If you dare.
All right.
But yeah, interestingly, he's never spotted far from his grave, whose inscription reads, "Gone, but not forgotten."
Oh, shit. That's really crazy and cool. I like his inscription. That really ties
and admittedly, "Gone but not forgotten" was a pretty common inscription back in the day.
I would say he's not forgotten and he's not gone either.
He's not going to let you forget.
Right.
Yeah, nope, not really gone.
Okay.
All
right, so
your turn.
I'm going to talk about a place called the Mendota Trestle.
Mendota Trestle. I know Mendota, but what's the Trestle?
All right. Well, yeah, Mendota is fairly unknown, and if you've ever been there, it's beautiful.
You only know Mendota if you live here.
Yeah, it's far. It's kind of a far drive from anywhere, and so in 1879, there was a kind of like a prisoner chain gang.
Okay.
These were convicts that were forced to clear land for companies.
So that seems very corrupt.
Oh, maybe, but I mean, I probably would rather be out in the woods, I guess.
Oh, well, yeah, they would probably rather be out in the woods than be locked up.
Yeah,
so,
but these were the deepest, darkest woods of Southwest Virginia, completely undeveloped or anything, and they were trying to get to the railroad.
Okay.
Basically, what happened was they were working for the Bristol Coal and Iron Narrow Gauge Railway, which came from Richmond. They were going from Abrams Creek to Mendota. They would have to cross the North Fork of the Holston River. Okay? At that point, one of the prisoners came up with an escape plan. He thought he could jump to the river and then get away. Well, it turns out during his escape, and we tried to jump, he actually died on the rocks. Like his jump was wrong, or something went horribly wrong, and he died. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, and the idea is that this trestle, where today there's a trestle there, was later built in that area, and people believe his spirit still haunts that spot. I'll see. What's the most recent? I need to find the date here. Hang on one second.
Okay.
It was in
Scrabble through your notes.
Yeah. Let's see. Actually, it doesn't say the date, but a camper reported. Yeah, Joe Tennis does not say when this was sighted, but basically, a camper reported when he was camping right by the trestle, and I've never heard this before, a light under the water.
Ooh.
Yes, so if you go and you try to find this, which is not accessible, by the way.
Okay.
You would have to hike to find this old railroad trestle.
Interesting.
To even do this. But if you wanted to go look for the ghost of an old prisoner, that's where it's at.
You can go look for it.
Yes, so that's the story of the Mendota Trestle.
Okay. So, the story that I have for you next is pretty interesting.
Okay.
I know you've heard of it a little bit at least. I'm going to tell you about Smith Mountain Lake, or what's most commonly referred to as Mountain Lake. I know you've heard of Mountain Lake.
I've been to Mountain Lake.
You've been there.
Yeah.
And didn't your mom mention it? Something about
no,
it?
yeah, I went there with my mom, and she was the one that told me about it, and it was really cool and beautiful and kind of strange.
Yeah.
I mean, the rocks around the edges are huge, these giant boulders, and the lake was really low at the time.
And I believe you told me that last you heard.
Yeah.
It's just gone.
Yeah, I don't know how it came up, but my mom told me that the lake is literally gone now. Like, they went to visit, and it's just an empty, hollow, no trees, rock.
Well, that won't last. Let me tell you a little bit about this lake.
Okay.
Okay. This whole thing with the lake going away and coming back, it's known for that.
Okay.
So, the Mountain Lake was originally discovered by Christopher Gist in 1751.
All right.
He described to, his friends and whoever in his writings, a lake atop a mountain with fresh, clear water and a gravelly shore. And the thing is, nobody could find this lake. Nobody could find the freaking lake. By the late 1800s, the most anybody ever found was maybe a pond or a place where a lake used to be that dried up.
Oh, right.
But in a few more years, it magically reappeared. A deep lake at an elevation of 3,875 feet, which is an even higher point than my hometown of Wise.
Yeah, that's gotta be super rare. I mean, there can't be many lakes like this in the world.
And one travel writer back in the 1700s, or the 1800s, rather, described it as a bottomless lake suspended among the clouds. Very beautiful. And basically, it's been doing the same thing ever since. It goes down, it comes up. It goes down, it comes up. The lake is fed by several pools, and part of the explanation is that the waters rise and fall with the rainfall, but also it periodically drains and refills through a hole in the lake floor. And according to geologists, every few years, earthquakes, like small earthquakes, will redistribute the water flow. And so that's part of the explanation for why it has such extreme variances.
Okay.
So eventually, it'll probably come back.
Okay.
Hopefully, I mean, climate change, it's a thing, but hopefully Mountain Lake will be back soon.
Yeah, hopefully, because there's an active business there.
Yes, there is. And it is a haunted business.
Okay.
So, over the years...
I'm listening. I'm going to poke the fire a little bit.
Okay. So, over the intervening years, several hotels came and went in this spot where the lake is. But in the 1930s, A man named William Lewis Moody bought the property and built the Sandstone Hotel that still stands there today, which opened its doors officially in 1936. William's daughter, Mary Moody Northern, eventually became the hotel's owner, and pretty much she ushered in the real glory days of the Mountain Lake Resort. She loved Mountain Lake, and she was kind of a very particular person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she wanted her toast to be perfectly golden toast.
Oh my.
She liked her ice cream to be served in perfectly round little scoops. I mean, she had standards, and she applied those to the hotel. And in her will, she basically made sure that the resort would be protected in perpetuity. A couple of examples, she wanted it to stay old-fashioned, and TVs would not be allowed in the main lodge. Like, if you're in a cabin, maybe you got a TV in the main hotel. No.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, you're here out in the woods, this beautiful lake resort. You're here to get away from it all, not sit on your butt in a hotel room and watch TV.
Right.
And, yeah, I mean, so she really shaped the vision and the direction for this resort for all time, I think. Because she loved it so much, it's believed that Mary Moody Northern's ghost still hovers around the hotel.
Okay.
Staff and guests report feeling a heavy presence in what used to be her suite, room 100. Little in her room has been changed over the years, and the staff report that she doesn't like it and makes it known when things are changed.
Wow.
There's a life-size portrait of her, you know, in one of the main kind of communal areas of the hotel. And this is a really interesting portrait. It's very lifelike, very detailed. And people report that it appears to watch you.
Like the eyes move or something? Oh my.
The eyes move. And another story that's told is a chef was, a more recent story. Okay, all this has been going on for a long time. But a more recent story is that a chef was entering the hotel, you know, basically coming into work on a wintry day in 2008 and heard a voice asking, "Who is that there?"
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
But obviously this would be a pretty friendly spirit who just wants, you know, the hotel to do well and things to be done right. And so probably, you know, if you're doing your job and everything, and she's probably fine, right? But that's not necessarily the only ghost.
Okay.
At the hotel. In the 1990s, a guest staying in one of the cottages reported encountering a ghostly woman who basically came into the cottage insisting that her son had drowned in the lake. And I think this person basically runs to management and gets the heck out of there.
Okay.
Is the idea, right? And nobody really thought all that much of it until 2008, when the water dropped to the level that it is now. Basically, a crater. Hotel guests, you know, poking around the crater, discovered wingtip shoes, some coins, a class ring, a belt buckle, and human bones at the bottom of the lake.
Oh, man.
The bones were determined to belong to Samuel Ira Felder, a ghost who fell into the lake from a rowboat and drowned in 1921. His body was never recovered until 2008.
Okay. So he's probably hanging around.
He's probably hanging around.
So I like this idea that, hey, if you want to go check out this beautiful place, you can go there for paranormal experiences and have a beautiful time. But also, even if there's not a lake at the moment, I can promise you it's unbelievably beautiful, and there are trails and things, so it's worth a visit.
Well, what I didn't mention earlier is that my dad, I haven't mentioned one of the most important things about Mountain Lake is that the movie Dirty Dancing was filmed, part of it at least, was filmed there in the 1980s.
Right.
And my dad was there at a work, like a training or seminar or something, when they were filming.
Wow.
And did not get a single autograph. Let me tell you, my mom was so pissed that he did not get her an autograph from Patrick Swayze. Oh my God. So mad. So mad. Or anyone. My mom was basically, what is wrong with you?
You probably found it was an inconvenience.
Freaking Jerry Orbach is in that movie. I mean, what the heck? No, not a single autograph. And in fact, being my dad, like, he was kind of cranky about all this Hollywood stuff going on.
Right.
It's like, dude.
That's awesome, and that's a really spectacular place. I mean, it's just it is kind of creepy in its own way.
It's. I mean, everybody's seen the movie. You know how beautiful it is.
Right. Yeah. You just don't realize. I don't think in the movie it's on top of a mountain.
No, you really can't tell from the movie that it. You know what the elevation is and everything, but it's definitely a beautiful place.
All right, so that's your story.
That's my story.
Okay. So I'm going to go into a story that really ties into the rich musical history and culture of Southwest Virginia. It's about a woman named Kate Peters Sturgill. You'll see the Sturgill name.
Yeah, everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
It's a common name in our area.
So she was, by all accounts, a musical prodigy.
Okay.
And she was born in 1907 in Wise County in a coal camp called Josephine.
Really cool.
Yes.
I know where Josephine is.
Yes, that's where she's from. And it was said that she played piano as soon as she could talk.
Wow.
Yeah. And, of course, she marries a coal miner.
Mm-hmm.
And they had children. And, her music was just part of her life. Okay? So she was playing in a string band in 1927. I'd have to find out if she was ever recorded or anything.
Yeah,
she should have been.
Did she record during the Bristol sessions?
I don't know. It's 1927, and that was happening at the time.
Interesting.
But, she was obviously, if she wasn't recorded, she should have been.
Yeah.
So, but this was the Depression, and I think this really talks to her character that she actually wanted to use music to uplift the community. So she convinced people, her friends, her family, to construct something called Josephine's Recreation Center.
Okay.
Which was basically kind of like a pick and porch type place where you play music, and there was a cabin, and it's on the Powell River. And eventually it was dubbed the Country Cabin.
Yes.
Which I know you've heard of.
Of course.
Yes. So this was, square dancing, games, fast fiddling music, and it became, really important. And over time, it's kind of got a gap in history where during her lifetime it wasn't the Country Cabin. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of fell out of use and became like a place of business and a rental facility. And so eventually, though, the larger Country Cabin 2 was constructed. So you can actually visit that as part of the Crooked Road.
Crooked Road, yes.
Yeah, music trail. So it's still there. It's still a significant part of history. So 1978 is when they really kind of got it back going again, after a kind of a dearth of not being what she meant it to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This place of gathering, of music, of joy. Okay, and so at least twice, we have 2 reports that she has been seen there. Okay?
Ooh, okay.
So in 1980, a longtime Country Cabin visitor, regular, reported her showing up with white light surrounding her form, sitting on a bench, kind of her arms crossed, watching. Okay, kind of like an approving way, like tapping her foot.
She's observing.
She is. She's watching over the place.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yes, that's right. And then, according to the report, she stayed there for 3 minutes.
Wow.
So a long time sighting.
That's a long sighting.
Yeah, and then again, excuse my dog, it's snoring. It's okay, Whoopa. It's okay. The other sighting was at a festival where she was spotted outside. It's definitely a place that if you're visiting the Crooked Road, don't miss the Country Cabin 2 and look out for her because she's a voice of the mountains.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So that's my story of her.
And that's really interesting because, I knew what the Country Cabin was, but I didn't know the story of its founder. And that's really amazing to know that it was founded by an Appalachian woman. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and married she was a coal miner's wife, and it doesn't get much more Appalachian.
No, it doesn't. That's pretty awesome.
All right.
All right. So next, I'm going to tell you about the ghosts of the Greystone Bed and Breakfast in St. Paul.
St. Paul. Oh man. Okay, I like that little town.
Yeah, it's a place that I've actually is really close to another area where I used to live for a few years. But also somewhere that we've been meaning to visit because our friend Brent Dingus is brewing at the local brewery there.
Yeah.
So definitely a place that we need to visit soon.
And I want to hear this story because I want to learn more about it firsthand.
Okay. So Greystone is aptly named because it is a big mansion built of gray stone. It's up on a hill.
It's a killer name.
It is. It's wonderful. It's so evocative. It overlooks St. Paul. Greystone, of course, is supposedly haunted. Primarily by a ghost that's known as Mr. Black.
Okay.
Which sounds scary, but it's not a very threatening haunting. Mr. Black seems to be the ghost of James E. Duff, who's the man who built the mansion originally. Mr. Duff died in 1911 right after he commissioned Greystone, a $40,000 structure, which, at the time, that's a lot of money.
That's a huge amount of money.
Yeah. Which comprises a maze of hallways that branch in unusual directions and hide rooms in unexpected places. So, almost like the Winchester Mansion.
Yeah.
Kind of weird and maze-like. Mr. Black, or James Duff, is typically seen dressed all in black, which actually, during his lifetime, was James Duff's habit. He tended to just wear dark colors, and he had dark hair. And typically the ghost's face is in shadow.
Okay.
But the proprietor's daughter, who frequently has seen the ghost, says that he's not a threatening presence. He just is kind of hanging around. Basically pretty hard.
So among poltergeists, a presence.
He's not a poltergeist.
Okay, I see.
Poltergeists tend to throw things around and wreak havoc.
Okay.
So he's a pretty mild mannered.
Would you call him a specter?
Ghost.
Just a ghost.
Just a ghost.
Okay.
Yeah. But there are a couple of others. He's not the only one.
All right.
So guests to the B&B have reported seeing a ghostly woman in a flowered dress, a gray-haired man in a white sweater. Another man reported that the balcony door to his room blew open in the night and a ghostly woman in a long dress sort of floated in, and he got the heck out of there. And Okay, I don't lend this one much credence, to be frank.
Okay.
A church group who was staying at the B&B departed in the middle of the night, reporting that they heard, quote, demons screaming in the walls.
Like the whole church bailed? Like the whole group bailed.
The whole group bailed. I'm sorry. Come
The
on.
devil's in the walls.
No one else reports anything like that.
Look, you've told me enough to want to check it out, though.
Oh, absolutely. But I think this last group is like basically suffering from mass hysteria.
They must have heard.
You go here, you heard it's haunted.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Calm down. Calm down. Drink a beer.
All right.
But yes, that is the story of Greystone Bed and Breakfast.
It
Possibly
sounds...
haunted. Yeah, as you say, I want to stay there.
We're
gonna stay
it
there.
Might be a nice little trip.
Might be a fun weekend trip, like this one.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I have saved the best for last.
Okay, he's been telling me about this, listeners, and I'm really excited. I'm pretty sure that I know most of this one, but
all right, so
take it away, Ben.
All right, I want you to, if you have any additional info, chime in.
Okay.
This is the first I've ever heard of this crazy story. All right, so there's a place called the Wise County Poor Farm.
There was.
From way back in the day.
Yes.
And it was basically a home for the homeless. And not anyone who lived or died there could afford a casket, even. It was that bad. It was just for people with nowhere else to go.
Those of you from outside our region mostly know of Appalachia through tales of poverty. That does not, in fact, comprise all of our story, but the poor farm, yeah, that's Appalachia's poverty.
Yeah,
it was pretty bad.
Yeah,
those people suffered.
Well, and they deserve, to have their story told here.
They do.
There was near the farm was a college founded called Clinch Valley College.
Woohoo! Go Cavs!
Yes.
That is my alma mater, listeners.
Which is now, of course, known as UVA-Wise.
Yes, UVA-Wise.
Right, right.
But, yeah, in fact, I graduated the last year that it was Clinch Valley College. They changed the name officially the next year.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful campus. And Wise is a great little town. And so this is first I've kind of learned about, when they were growing.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was 1954 was when the school was established.
Yes.
But it was growing in 1957 already. And they needed space, and they had this unused space nearby, which was Cemetery Hill.
The former Poor Farm Cemetery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The former Poor Farm Cemetery.
There's that.
And so they didn't just build on it, though. They started to move the graves. As we know, is not the best idea.
Not always the best idea.
And so they didn't know, actually, like, how many graves are there at first.
Uh-oh.
So they had to keep digging and looking, and they came up to almost 100 or more.
Ooh.
Yeah. And today, not all the graves have even been found. So there's still more remains. Like, they weren't all marked.
Yeah.
So it's beneath the Zemer Hall?
Yeah,
Hall? Zemer Hall and the nearby John Cook Willie Library.
Wiley
Library.
Yes.
Okay, so this is when things start to get creepy.
Yeah, those buildings are haunted.
Librarian Ann Dusing.
That is actually a woman that I worked with at one time.
In 1997, reported.
I worked with her around 2001. Yes, I know her.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So this is very close to home.
So cool.
All right. In 1997, at 1 a.m. in the morning.
I went to school there then.
she heard footsteps.
Uh-oh.
All right, this is the middle of the night.
Yes.
All right. So she calls the police, the campus cops.
Oh, of course.
So there's a record of this.
Yes.
All right. So she calls police. There's someone here, and she worked up her courage and actually follows the sound of the footsteps. And she looks around a bookshelf, and then she saw it. It was a white skirt swirling around, and she didn't see the body. She just saw a white skirt and it was moving. Okay? So she got the hell out of the library, and she decided to stop working so late.
I bet.
At that point, and
just go home at a
come to find out, a custodian had reported the same thing. Okay.
Wow. And let me just interject here.
Yeah.
That Anne is not a fanciful person. Okay. She's very practical, very level-headed. It speaks volumes to me that this story comes from her.
Right. Those footsteps were real.
Yes. Absolutely. This is a person who, if she heard this story from someone else, she probably wouldn't believe it.
That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
this is so real. And if you think about like the haunting potential of this situation, okay. So there's more to this.
Okay.
All right. There were wakes that were held at Crockett Hall, which was established in 1924, which later became like the main building.
It's a dormitory.
Okay, it became a dormitory after that. Okay, I got that wrong, but it was once a residence hall and later became campus offices, according to this.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. When I was there, it was still a dorm.
But in the days of the Poor Farm, it was a morgue.
Oh.
Caskets would be open. The living would, come there to have like funerals. And this is the creepiest thing I've ever heard. Coffins were reused.
Ew.
Yes. Okay. So, in 1975, Charles Lewis discovered one of these coffins. Okay? It was like somewhere in the basement of Crockett Hall.
Okay. Let me interject here.
Yeah.
One of my parents might have still been there then.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Lewis is a theater professor, and he's looking for props.
Yeah.
So he's digging around the basement.
Yeah.
That's where he finds this thing. Okay.
He found one of the coffins.
Yes, and he's doing a production of The Death and Life of Sneaky Fitch.
Okay.
Okay, and he wasn't superstitious, but he thought it was great, very accurate.
Oh, of course.
And so he wasn't thinking, I'll just curse the entire theater department. But so the coffin hadn't been there a week when multiple students were talking about reports of an elderly gentleman dressed in old clothing wandering around. And nobody knew who he was. Like, he wasn't associated with anybody in the department. He was just this old man in like
Creepy.
Really old clothes. And it was the same person, so everyone's like sharing like their stories with each other about this character.
Who is this dude?
Yes.
A ghost.
And so at that point, he became the official ghost of the theater building, and it became associated with the coffin.
Wow.
Okay, and some of them actually today they call it the box, which is still there at the theater department, like as a prop. Like, are you kidding me?
Go theater department.
I just couldn't believe that. It's like, come on.
Have no fear.
Come on. I mean, at least put it back in the basement.
Put it in the basement.
Somewhere. So.
I mean, they probably do. If they take it out again.
Yeah, so there you go. There's your very own UVA wise haunting.
Wow. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember if my mom saw something spooky when she was there. Because I should point out that both my parents also went to school there.
Really?
Yes, my mom graduated in 72, but Dad was in Vietnam, so he may have still been in school there in 75. I don't know. I don't remember. But yes. My entire family went to school there.
That is amazing. And
so,
well, speaking of your dad, I'd like to actually, if I can, I think we should dedicate this episode to him.
really,
I do.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I just want to tell you people listening that his name was Chip Collins, and you can actually find more about him because he's really an actual hero of the Vietnam War. And even though he's no longer with us, I like to imagine that maybe his ghost is here, you know, proud of you and
Well, he sure did love this place.
yeah.
He loved it here so much, and I think his time in Marion, he was really happiest when he lived here across from the lake. So yeah, that's awesome. I definitely this podcast, this episode is dedicated to my dad.
All right then. So do you have anything else to add? I mean, why don't you close us out then?
Okay. Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in for this episode of Appalachian Arcana. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast platform. We did finally get added to Google Play. I've heard that not a lot of people use it, but hey, we're there. We made it. You can also find out more about the show at AppalachianArcana.com, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Appalachian Arcana, or on Twitter at Appy with a Y Arcana. Until next time, keep your eyes open. There's a lot of things that go bump in the night in these hills. Bye.
See ya.